Hello, my name is Amy Corral. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and on the pediatric palliative team at Good Shepherd Community Care, I'm working as the art therapist. This morning we had a really great chance to sit down virtually with each other to discuss and start to brainstorm what is it going to be like when we start to phase in-person visits again. Just to put that conversation in context, here we are, it's June 3rd, and we are still in phase one of reopening here in Massachusetts. So this initial conversation really is the start of the idea and the process of how do we go in. So since March, we've been doing remote visits. Some clinicians have decided to do visits via telehealth for a variety of reasons that didn't feel like the right interaction for me with some of the little people that I work with. So I decided to do art kits where basically I could drop off a soup to nuts intervention at the home in person. And they looked like this. So this was this week's, which was in celebration of diversity. And that's been working pretty well for me. And some of the thoughts that I had about it and reflecting on what has this experience been like doing remote art therapy helped me create this visual here. So I had here the image of a flashlight, meaning that I understand that the scope of what I can do has been narrowed by the circumstances of doing this apart from each other. But what I do feel like was illuminated and worked pretty well for our circumstances is that it was 100% safe. Remote visits were 100% safe for me and for the families that I was visiting. And they felt in line with the agency mission, even though I wasn't face-to-face with my clients. And also felt in line with the professional recommendations from the Board of Allied Health for licensed mental health counselors, for art therapists, and the CDC recs of the things that we should be doing right now. I thought that doing this remote art therapy helped me to maintain my relationships with the kiddos that I've been working with in a way that felt really positive to me. I liked doing the art kits because I felt that I could adapt. It was an adaptable strategy for a variety of cognitive and developmental and physical spectrum issues. So that's where we get into a little bit of the telehealth stuff for me. I felt like, bringing in art supplies to someone's house and then trying to do that on a computer with them would feel like too high a demand on the families at this time, and decided to let them explore the art at their own pace at a time that felt the most playful to them, not at a time that was 9 to 5 for me. I was able to provide a really consistent delivery service. And always in time of trauma, I think about this. How can I provide the most consistency, the most predictability, so that there can be this sense of anticipation and hope that feels positive during this time? So every 2 weeks, I go on my art deliveries, and we had really good participation with that. I had 61% of my families participating on a bi-weekly basis with the art drop-offs, compared to about 71% pre-COVID of people that accept regular bi-weekly visits in the house. So on the flip side of that, kind of in the dark side of my flashlight, things that weren't illuminated, is biosynchronicity, individually attuned interventions, reciprocity. Like if we were sitting together right now, I could see your face and see whether you're ready for me to move on or whether you're interested in hearing more about these things. But right now, I don't know. I'm not synced to you. I'm just talking to you. And then range of materials. So because I really believed that all the interventions should be soup to nuts as they went into the home. That was a little limiting in terms of, working with paints that I could package up, working with glue that I could put in little baggies and send that along. Paper, good paper, as many of you art therapists know, good paper is critical to success. So accessibility for that, not only the range of materials that I was sending into the home and making sure that they were appropriate and, not overwhelming. Also for myself, getting an access of range of materials during this time was difficult. Kind of exercised my creativity quite a bit. And then assessments. That kind of went into the dark. The ability to do assessments to see the progress of someone and how they were progressing towards the goals that I had set at the onset of our relationship together, which had me kind of limit our relationships to just our current families right now. I found that this model didn't feel appropriate to take into a new family's home. And then up here I have some trees, and my trees are, the known factors, things that we knew about the family, the dynamics, the family's resources, and their plan of care prior to COVID. And then we had the what's in the dark, which is the circumstances that we don't know about what changed in the family dynamics and in the circumstances of their family life during COVID. So I hope you can see that there. And now moving on to when we start to conceptualize what would it be like to start to phase in-person visits during this time. The image that really came to me was an image of a rainbow. Because, I think there's like a single strand of light that then breaks into a million pieces as it's refracted, and we see this beautiful, colorful experience, but we're witnessing a complexity of interactions, and that's what I think of when I think of going into the home again. I think of a complexity of interactions that we need to consider kind of all at once, as opposed to normally we might be able to consider these things one at a time. So here's my rainbow. Here's clinician here with little mask on, and our kiddo who may or may not be able to be masked. We don't know. And that's us 6 feet apart. I call this COVID-19 adapted in vivo art therapy. In vivo meaning that two organisms are meeting each other and all the complexities that come with that. I prioritized this according to what's on my mind. And my first thing that was on my mind was kind of creature comforts, the comforts. I think for those of us on the roads, we sometimes don't talk so much about the comforts that we manage throughout the day, as far as just even things like stopping in at your favorite lunch place to use the restroom there while you're visiting between multiple houses. Childcare being available. Materials for hand washing. I was thinking of vulnerabilities that might be present in our own families, in people that we're living with in our households, and comfortability with PPE. I was informed by the nurses this morning that putting on and taking off PPE is called donning and doffing, and I will definitely need some heavy tutorials in how to properly put on PPE and get comfortable with taking it off in a safe way. And then what does that look like when we're in between houses? What do we have in our cars that we're storing PPE in? Or does this mean that we need to go home between each visit and derobe? And then, do we show up at the house and we have PPE on? Do we put that on after we leave our cars? These are all questions I don't know about. I'd like to know what the protocol will be before we consider going in. And on the patient spectrum of this, and in the family side of this, wondering about what would be a family's motivation to saying yes to having one of us in their home as a complementary therapist. What are their hopes and goals for welcoming someone back into their home? And is the clinician that they're welcoming back in the most appropriate provider of the care towards that goal? For example, if what someone's really looking for is respite, an art therapist or a music therapist might not be the most appropriate person to go into the home for half an hour to be with the child. It might be another person. Limit setting. How comfortable is the family with being present for the entire visit and setting some firm boundaries around physical interactions with the clinician? And pets too. I don't want to ignore the pets out there who might want to tug on your PPE or get curious about your booties or whatever it is. What is that going to look like? And what is the family's comfortability with providing you a space to do work at a physical distance? So I live here in Boston. I don't think there's any way another human could be in my house and could find 6 feet in which they could be apart from any other human. I have not found it. And yeah, so I think about a lot of the families that live here in the inner city or in other urban areas that maybe have a porch or something, but then moving through the house to get to that porch. How many people are in the house? People with backyards, might be a different thought process. If someone has a backyard, you could set up a canvas on one side of the yard and shoot paint guns at it from across the yard. That's going to be a different consideration. And also, is the family comfortable providing you a place to wash your hands? Are they comfortable letting you into the spaces that have sinks so that you can wash your hands? And the next thing I was thinking about is understanding, particularly around kiddos that may have a hard time already reading social cues or processing information about, for example, why we're wearing PPE. Maybe the only time that they've seen someone fully decked out in PPE is when they're about to have a pretty complex procedure. So it may feel like, whoa, someone's in my house with this stuff on. Does that mean I'm not safe in my house? Is something about to happen to me? So I think we have to consider that pretty carefully. Our team has been talking about developing some social stories around that, which I'm super excited about. Also on that front, on the therapist side, thinking about things like language barriers. What is going to be the best way to communicate with a family whose first language is other than English and is not comfortable communicating in English? Especially if things come up, like I show up at a house and it looks like someone might be ill in the family, might be sick. What's going to be my process for getting in touch with a translator? How long will that take? Will that process feel prohibitive to my comfort level in that home? And inclusion, thinking about that, siblings have been home and are probably just as bored as everyone else, so that our presence in the home may feel really novel. And we may find ourselves working in inclusion with siblings who maybe haven't been in our sessions together before. Just considering what that would be like, bringing extra materials, including them in the explanations of what to expect from the session, just giving them an orientation, things like that. And the next thing I have on my rainbow of consideration is our place in the care team. On our PediPal team, we sometimes talk about ourselves as being like a layer of support for families. And uh, if we decide that we're going to be some of the first practitioners in the home, if early intervention, for example, and physical therapists and speech therapists provided from school districts are still doing telehealth therapy, what would it mean if we are on that kind of front wave of going into the home? Where does that put our place in the communication of the care team overall? We may be some of the first people to see some things going on that then we need to be able to communicate to a larger team. And also encouraging families to talk with their PCP about the possibility of having someone in their home. That they should be in communication with the physician who's holding the whole picture of the risk and benefits of that kind of intervention before they make a final decision to say yes or no to us about going into the home. And then lastly, does it fit with the mission? If we stick with this, does that feel like we are continuing to serve the mission of our team, of our agencies, or not? I mean, that's a philosophical discussion that I think will be wonderful to grapple with. And then I have these two little clouds here. And these two clouds represent two situations in which I see moving through this process much more quickly. And those are if someone needs end-of-life support and they are not in a place where a memory-making team is available to them. That would be a case where I would say, we're gonna move through this process of thinking pretty quickly. I'd like to get in there and do some memory making with the family before the end of life. Or if we had an acute intake who looked like they might be headed towards that path pretty quickly. And then I have these two quotes here about rainbows in general, which resonated with me, which is no rain, no rainbows. Yeah. The reign of COVID is kind of giving us a chance to review these complex issues that I think really we grapple with pre-COVID or now. These are all things as clinicians that we work on considering, but now it feels like we have to kind of do it all at once. No rain, no rainbows. And then when my daughter was 2 or 3, she was really curious about rainbows. She'd never seen one. She saw them in books and coloring them a lot, but couldn't find any in the sky. And she was thinking a lot about that. She said, "Mom, rainbows take a lot of vacation days." And that stuck with me in this process because I think while it is tempting to ignore these complexities and just kind of see the beam of light that can shine straight through from our current situation to us going into the house, that we can really look at this time of reflection as a benefit for looking at all these issues. And I'm really glad to be part of a team that's so open to these discussions. I hope this was helpful to you and your thinking about maybe going back into the home and how your phase process will be. If you'd like to also use this metaphor of the rainbow in your discussions, there's a great just blank template on this website called firstpalette.com. And you could print a couple of these up, or people could print them up at their homes, kind of think of their layers of concern, what's coming up for them, and help it to guide your discussion. Thank you so much for listening, and all the best to you. Good luck out there.